In one of my last videos, we looked at the northernmost point of every country in the Arctic Circle. Well, in this video, we're going to be looking at the southernmost point of every country that has territory below 50 degrees south. The reason I'm not choosing the Antarctic Circle for this video is there's just simply no countries with any territory around that area. But there are 7 countries that have territory below 50 degrees south, starting out with France, surprisingly. At 50 degrees and 1 minute south, we have the Boynes Islands that are just south of Kerguelen. This is part of the French southern and Antarctic lands. However, way under this cold and desolate island, you have these small little rocky outcroppings that just go under 50 degrees south. Officially, this island right here is the southernmost point of France. These small islands down here weren't even discovered until 1772, and when zooming out a bit, they really sit in the middle of nowhere. Zooming back into these islands, there does appear to be something even farther south in these islands. Not sure if it's a wave or if it's a rock that's slightly under the water, but it is possible that there might be something here. I just couldn't find any confirmation about it. Don't worry, the more south we go, the more wild it's going to get. And next, we have New Zealand's Jacquemart Island. Sorry I'm not good at pronouncing French words, but this is a small little island just under Campbell Island. We'll zoom out a little bit so you can see where this is. This is way under the bulk of New Zealand, and honestly getting down close to the Bouvet Islands and Scott Island, which we've covered in other videos. But anyway, coming back to this island, it's extremely remote, and apparently humans had not actually landed on this point until 1980. There was a short scientific mission here where people were here in 1980 for only 90 minutes, and then they left. And people went back in 1984 and 1997, but it seems like those are the only 3 expeditions to this place ever. Like a lot of these other remote islands, rats were introduced to Campbell Island, and they totally destroyed the bird population, especially a bird called the Campbell snipe. And for a long time, the only place where these Campbell snipes could be found was down here on this little island, because the rats couldn't get across the sea here. Eventually, the rats were eradicated on Campbell Island, and Campbell snipes have been slowly coming back, but it's been taking a long time. All right, the next place we're going to look at is Norway. We're going to go all the way down to 54 degrees, 27 minutes south to none other than Bouvet Island, which I've covered before in a video about the most isolated place on Earth. However, something I didn't really talk about in that video is that this little island right here, that's just off the southwestern coast of Bouvet Island, is called Lars Island, and it is actually the most southern point of Norway. Taking a step back here, Bouvet Island is extremely isolated. In fact, it's the most isolated place on Earth, which is why I made a video all about it. It's over 1,600 kilometers away from the nearest point of land, which is somewhere in Antarctica or the South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands, which really don't have any permanent population on it. And if you somehow get stranded on this place, you're pretty much done for. Expeditions rarely come by here. Sometimes there's ham radio expeditions that come here, but it's pretty infrequent and there's not very many scientific expeditions. Lars Island itself is pretty much just some rock and waves and doesn't have much else going on it. So let's get right into the next one. So just 1 degree under Bouvet and Lars Island, we have Australia's southernmost point at 55 degrees, 7 minutes south. And when I search that in, nothing actually shows up right here. It's literally just nothing. There was what appeared to be a spot in Google Earth that was a little different than everything else right around here, but I couldn't quite see it, so I did some more searching. So I tried just typing in Bishop and Clerk Islets on Google Maps, and it also brought me to that same spot where you can't see anything, right under Macquarie Islands. And this place is also extremely remote, just like New Zealand's southernmost point. But I think what's going on here is these islands are really, really small. They're only a few acres each. They're really just rocky outcroppings, kind of like a lot of the islands we'll be covering in this video. But similar to Scott Island, which I've done a video about before, sometimes islands are just too small to even be read on Google Maps, especially if they're far out in the ocean like this one, or like Kolbensee in Iceland that we also covered in the northernmost video. But even unlike Scott Island and Kolbensee, there's no pictures on Google Maps. I tried searching on images if I could find any of this place, but it always brought me to something else called Bishop and Clerk, which is not in this area. And even the Wikipedia doesn't have much info on this place, nor any pictures. It says only 3 landings have ever been made on Bishop and Clerk Islets, and you have to do it by a ship-assisted helicopter ride, and the last known landing was 1993. So hopefully in editing I can find some pictures of this place to show you guys. Okay, just kidding. I used Esri Landsat imagery, and I actually did find the islands. They're really hard to make out, but it's these right here in the middle. Very, very blurry, but That's the only decent image I could see of these places. Anyways, let's go to the next one, which is Argentina's southernmost point at 55 degrees, 3 minutes south. And this one's a little more tangible than the other ones. You can actually see it on Google Maps, and there's actually a photosphere. Let's zoom out a little bit so you can see where this is. Right at the tip of Tierra del Fuego. Not as far as Chile's most southern point, which we'll get to next, but right over here, there's a little island that's all by itself. And it's in a very remote area. If you put down the photosphere guy, there's literally only one road that's miles and miles away from this point. But interestingly, there's a photosphere right on the southernmost point of the mainland, which if you drop down into, you can see a really cool looking lighthouse. Kind of reminds me of a bowling pin for some reason. And then if you come over here, you can see the most southern point of Argentina right there. All right, we have 2 more countries left. And the next one will be Chile, actually, at 56 degrees, 32 minutes south. And these are called the Islas Diego Ramírez. And these are really far under the rest of Chile. Let's take out the photosphere guy to look around. Yeah, there's absolutely no roads anywhere close to here. So obviously the only way to get here is by boat or I guess a helicopter ride. But this is known as the southernmost point of all of the Americas. And this was actually the southernmost point to ever be discovered from 1619 to 1775. So for those around 150 years, these islands were the southernmost point of the world. We didn't 100% know about Antarctica until well after that. Now you might think there's probably nothing on these islands and nothing goes on here. Well, first of all, they're really important for seabird breeding, which a lot of these islands are, let's be real. But there's actually a Chilean Navy station and a meteorological station there. There's no towns and nothing really else going on. But tourists can get down here, and there are pictures of this place online. If Chilean southernmost point was known as the southernmost point of the world until 1775, what was discovered next? That would be the final southernmost point of any country on Earth, which is none other than the UK. At 59 degrees and 25 minutes south, you have none other than the Southern Thule Islands. And it looks really messed up on Google Maps, as a lot of these southern islands are. And let's zoom out a little bit to see where we are. So this is part of the South Georgia and South Sandwich Islands, and this is the most southern point of any of those. Anything you go farther south in this is Antarctic territory, and while countries do claim it and do have bases here that they have jurisdiction over, they don't technically have any actual territory here. But anyways, coming back to these islands, there's 3 different ones: Thule Island, Cook Island, and Bellinghausen Island, which you can barely see. Oh, here it is up here. These were discovered in 1775 by James Cook, and it does actually have some cool lore to it. So Argentina had a hut here from 1954 to 1956, but they abandoned it after eruption happened nearby. Then they came back and they built a pretty solid looking base called Corbeta, Uruguay, and it was operational between 1976 and 1982. The British had a mission called Operation Keyhole in 1982, in which they came here and basically destroyed the base. After that point, it's been UK's island ever since. Eventually, I do want to make a more in-depth video about this because I think it's really interesting history. Obviously, Argentina and the UK had a lot of fighting around this area. I'm just here to talk about the southernmost point, which is right over here on Thule Island, and it's called Herd Point, way down here. Nothing really crazy going on here. Bellinghausen and Thule Island are simple volcanic cones, but Cook is multiple volcanic cones apparently. And these islands look kind of small, but they actually get really high up. They get up to 1,075 meters high or 3,500 feet on Cook Island. And they're home to a lot of sea spiders, which is interesting, especially around this southernmost point. And I didn't even know about these until I researched this video. A lot of chinstrap and macaroni penguins also nest here, and then fur seals and southern elephant seals are very common. But you might think, wow, these islands are really far south. Well, they're at 59 degrees south, and interestingly, if you come all the way up here to the Shetland Islands, if you go to this town called Twat, it's at 60 degrees north. So Twat in the Shetland Islands is actually more north than the Thule Islands way down here are south. So that's all the countries that have a southernmost point under 50 degrees south. If you go to the very, very South Pole at 90 degrees south exactly, you have the Amundsen Scott Station, which is jurisdiction of the USA. It's actually 9,300 feet or 2,385 meters high. It actually looks pretty chill. There's a basketball court there. There's a bunch of videos and tours of people that work there on YouTube. There's also a huge telescope there. There's something called the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory, which has thousands of these deep sensors in the ice that can detect lights from neutrinos. It's super cool. And they literally have no time zone there. Well, they do. They use UTC plus 12, which is New Zealand's time. But technically, you could choose any time of the day you want, and you would be correct. The farther north or farther south you go, the less time zones really matter. And at this point, all of the time zones converge. So if you're standing on the South Pole, you can pretty much choose whatever time zone you want. Well, there you go. Hope you enjoyed the video.